Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Hi, Pinky.
Hello, Anais. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. For anyone who's used to these, but obviously haven't met you yet, I just want to give a quick heads up. This is live from Canary Wharf. I know it looks a little bit like Dubai in a way, with like the big buildings. But anyway, very excited to be here. For anyone who hasn't met you just yet, would that be okay to share a little bit more about yourself?
Of course. Yeah. Thank you so much for letting me come on and asking me to talk a little bit about a topic that we all find so interesting. I mean, imposter syndrome is, do I have it? Do I not have it? What is it? How does it show up? All of that. Anyway, we'll get into that, I suppose, in a moment. A little bit about me. My name is Pinky Gadiali. I am an inclusive leadership coach, and I help organizations become more profitable through helping them become more inclusive, to help them understand what it means to be more diverse, to bridge the gender gap, and to improve that gender imbalance that we have at the moment.
So exciting. So many things we need to talk about. I mean, I could not expect a better way to start the month with you, with all of the work that you do and what you're focusing on. So that's awesome. We're probably going to have to like unpack a lot of the topics as we go along. But I know today we are here to talk, like you were saying, about a topic dear to my heart. And like you're saying, to probably a lot of people's, maybe not necessarily hearts, because a lot of people have a very negative relationship with imposter syndrome. But let's talk about these things. I think for starters, it would be really good if I can have your perspective as to what is it for you, imposter syndrome?
Would it help if I gave the definition?
Yes, let's go for dictionary first. 100%.
Well, it's actually, first of all, I want to say that if you're sitting there right now and you're thinking, I'm not sure if I have it, over 70% of the population actually do have it. So if you do feel like you are not sure, then you're more likely to have it than not, first of all. And if you do have it, you are one of many, like me. I have it every day, like you. um, and really, imposter syndrome is when you are successful and you're confident, but you convince yourself that you're not good enough. And, it's that whole, despite that external evidence of you having all the qualifications, all that hard work you put in, you still feel like I'm not enough. So that's it. That is the dictionary definition of it.
It's funny you mentioned that because I'm also part of an initiative called I Am Remarkable. And
So am
one
I.
thing that, there we go. I knew we were going there. And I think one thing that I love about these is that they say if it's not bragging, if it's facts. So I think let's talk a little bit more about that for a second, because
Mm.
I'd love to have your view in terms of the work that you do, the people and the clients you work with. But the clients I do work with, essentially, I could hear them talking and I could hear the imposter syndrome getting in the way. And I could also feel that this is 100% not rational. So I feel like, for starters, if it's something for anyone who's listening to it, and I'm talking to myself as well as we're talking, I think it's really important to see objectively what are the facts versus what's the reality you're creating for yourself in a way. Because the mind is such a, I mean, I'm fascinating about the mind, you probably know that already, but it could be the best ally, like it could be the worst thing that could happen to you. And I feel like we need to talk a little bit more today, if that works with you, about how can we actually assess what's going on up there, if I can put it this way.
Yeah, I think it's one of the major factors and one of the ways that I work with my clients. So, for instance, I work with a lot of C-suite executive senior leaders who actually, believe it or not, most of them are struggling with imposter syndrome.
Mm.
And it's that place where you've got to, and you feel like, how on earth have I got here? It's a fluke, it's a fraud, that whole What I've done is not through my own hard work, my
My own
own,
doing, yeah.
yeah, and it's that feeling of I'm going to get found out. Someone any minute now is going to walk into my office and tell me to get out. Um, the lack of confidence, that lack of self-esteem, that feeling of being a fraud, and that fear. There's that fear element of, it's constantly there on a daily basis of not feeling like you're enough. So I think there's a big part of this is listening to your own inner critic. So I've got this thing about and I can't say it because it's a swear word, but
Oh, you can. I can excuse your French. Don't worry. It's a safe space.
okay. So the itty bitty shitty committee, I call it, in your
Love it.
mind, and it pretty much judges you. You judge yourself. You start telling yourself things, and you self-deprecate before you even start. So I'll give you an example. One of my clients who would never have thought about applying for another job in another company somewhere else. When I started working with her, she was so super like aware of the fact that this inner critic, this itty bitty shitty committee kept coming up every time she wanted to apply for a job. And it was telling her, you don't deserve this. You're not worthy. You don't have all those things that they're telling you that you need to start this job. So what's the point? Why even bother? Why even bother trying to apply? Because you're only going to get rejected anyway. And so she never applied. And then when we started working together, there was this complete switch of a flick in her head, which helped her understand. Firstly, let's talk to the imposter syndrome, our itty bitty shitty committee, and say, thanks so much, because this is what it's doing, right? It's keeping us safe.
It's
It's
the
keeping,
comfort zone 101, right?
yeah. So it's telling us we can't push past this because if we do, we're going to fail. And if we do it, then, people are going to judge us, or, someone might say something, and my brain's telling me I can't do it. I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm not good enough to do this, and I don't deserve it. And when you put yourself down like that, and you're not talking to yourself like your best friend, because how many times have you heard yourself say things to yourself, and then actually, if you were giving that same advice to your best friend or your child or someone that you love and care about, you would never speak like that to them. We are so mean to ourselves.
We
So
are.
part of it is that analyzing, actually looking at who is it that's talking to us in that way? And is it really true? Because 99% of the time, it really isn't. It's just made up. It's just your brain going, I'll just keep you safe in this little box so that you don't have to use your brain or move forward in any way to get you to wherever you want to be. Because where you are right now, you may be okay, but you're not happy and you want to move to another job. So after I worked with this client, we analyzed that. We then worked on that voice. NLP is very, very effective
Yeah.
in helping change the thinking process, because when you keep on telling yourself something, it just strengthens that and strengthens it. It's almost like this path, right? You're walking through a field,
True. Yeah.
and if you keep on walking through that field at the same path, it
Over and
just
over.
becomes over and over, it just becomes this hole, it becomes a track. So
Yeah.
you keep on telling yourself the same thing. So we have to change that old story, create another way, another track, one that you want, that's positive, that's actually beneficial for you and what it actually needs to say. Something like, I deserve this
Mm-hmm.
and I am enough. Because so many of us hold ourselves back by telling ourselves old stories that don't really work for us. They're not beneficial.
Absolutely. Oh, I love everything about what you said. And to be honest, if I could just still for a second your expression, the ETBT shitty committee, I feel like sometimes what helps, I know it's an exercise I do for myself, I do with my clients, is to recognize, I know it sounds schizophrenic, but it's to recognize who is up there, you know, and you might have like a version of yourself who's the one trying to do good for her parents, for example. I know like parental pressure is a big thing also depending on like the country that you're from, but that could really be something quite big. It might be the version of yourself who is the one really, really scared of anything in life, you know, that me version of you who was afraid of, I don't know, dipping her toe in the water or whatever. Another version that might be the one who is completely independent, is like, I don't need anybody and I'd rather not be rejected by anyone and just do my own thing, even if it means staying in my own corner. Anyway, you've got the idea. But I feel like, you know, breaking them down, because I think this is what also is hard when you're struggling with imposter syndrome. Like you were saying, the path has been walked so many times that you don't even know what are the other paths out there. But if you just take a minute and recognize who is actually walking that path, you can just tackle them one by one. Not to say you've got 20 in your head, don't worry. But you can actually tackle what are the big sort of common things coming in: fear of, I don't know, failure, finances, rejection. I mean, you name it, the list is endless. The point is, trying objectively to see who is in charge when they are in charge. That could help also to take a step back. And like you were saying, I love your analogy with that path. You can actually from there then consciously make a decision to say, you know what, thank you everyone up there, love the appreciation and support. I know you're trying to protect me, but right now I'm just way too much in my comfort zone. I'm not thriving, I'm not happy. Life is too short to feel unfulfilled at work, so let's actually try something slightly different. Stay with me, everybody. I know this is how I talk to myself sometimes. It can be a little bit schizophrenic, but I don't know how you feel about that. I don't know who is in charge for you up there, but yeah, that's my theory.
I love it. I think that's really accurate. It's very similar to what I tell my clients. So I operate on the 4 C's. So number one is catch it. So you catch the thought, because if you don't catch it, you can quite quickly spiral out of control, and it can get a lot bigger than what it actually is.
Yeah,
And it
and the path is
snowballs
being run like, yeah, miles an hour,
crazy
100%.
over and over
Yeah.
again. And it just takes over your whole mind. So catch it and be quick. And we are the thinker of our thoughts, right? So we direct our way, our direction goes where our thinking goes. So if you start a job interview, for instance, and you're thinking, I'm not going to get this, you've pretty
Guess
much
what?
failed.
I know, setting yourself up failure, 100%.
Do you think you're going to get it? Probably not. I think, you really got to think about that, because a lot of the time we don't analyze what we're actually thinking. And, you go to a meeting and you go, I really want to say this. I really want to say this. I want to stand up and say this. And you don't say it.
No.
You sit there, and at the end, and you go, oh, I wish I'd said that. And it's those things on a day-to-day basis that add up. So you really have to think about that. And the other thing that I get a lot of is when you keep your head down and keep working and you don't promote yourself. This goes back to your I am remarkable comment that you made. So the workshops that I deliver with them is very much around how can you actually make a list. Make a list. This is really important. Make a list of all the things that you've done, that you've achieved in the last 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, and have a look at that, and then go, I deserve that promotion. Because some of the time you sit there and you think, oh, I'm just going to keep my head down and keep working. No, that's not how you get a promotion.
That's not how you get visible. 100% not. Okay, so the first one is catch it. What are the other three? I'm curious now.
Second one is check it. Remember I was saying 99% of the thoughts that you have are not real? Well, if you check in and go, is that actually real? No, it's not. And if you're not sure about it, ask someone. Ask your best friend. And everyone needs to have a best friend in their mind, by the way. I always go back to that. It's always my default. What would your best friend say? And if you ask that, and you're saying a different thing, then you're pretty much guaranteed that it's not true, right? So you've checked it, you've caught it, you've checked it. The fourth thing is changing it. So what are you going to say to yourself that's more beneficial than what you already have? So I deserve it. I am going to get this job. I'm going to say what I need to say. I'm going to have my voice heard in this meeting. And then you need to really check that language, and you have to be a lot faster than the brain, because like I said earlier, your brain's fast and it pretty much will catch you out if you're not quick enough. So outsmart your brain. And then the fourth thing, it's a choice, right? Everything's a choice. You choose how you think, how you act, how you feel all the time. And unless you're actively thinking about it, because this is all subconscious stuff that's going on in the back of your brain, half the time we don't even know what's going on. So it's really checking in and saying, how do I choose to be today? How am I going to choose to direct my brain to where I need it to go? And then that's where you have it.
Yeah. And I feel like this is where it sometimes gets hard, because when the imposter syndrome is taking 100% over, it seems like you don't have a choice. It seems that there are just no options whatsoever available to you. Like we were talking about, that path that is just going on and on. So I know we obviously have the final part of this session to talk about tips, but we already started, and I love the 4C's. So anyone listening in, the 4C's are your friend. Thank you for sharing.
Welcome.
Do you have any tips for anyone who feels like they're definitely stuck, especially in the context like we were talking about career earlier? Like, if you really feel the imposter syndrome is the one thing holding you back and it doesn't seem like you have a choice, do you have any tips to overcome that hurdle?
Honestly,
loaded question.
Yeah, it's a big question. There's so many tips out there. There's so many things you can do. Imposter syndrome is one of these things that is at a deeper level. So you can sit there and you can say, so self-doubt is different, because self-doubt is like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And if you give yourself a bit of a pep talk and you read a few magazine articles and you read about it and you motivate yourself and go to a few seminars or webinars or whatever, you can pretty much get yourself out of it.
Sure.
But imposter syndrome is the I am statement. So I am is really defining who you are, and that takes inner, deeper work. And it's about reframing your thinking. And reframing your thinking is a technique that you need to be able to be self-aware in the first place, and then to create that action. And it's a consistent daily practice. So this is what happened with me and many of my clients following that, is that if you don't get that external help, that accountability, it's so important. You need somebody there that's going to say, okay, so what is it? What was that last negative thought that you had? What came into your head? And then let's work at how we can overcome that. And where are you now? And where you need to be? There's a gap, right? So how are you going to do that? That gap needs to be, you need to bridge it. And the only way to bridge that gap is getting somebody, get a coach, 100%, get somebody that's going to hold you accountable, that's going to challenge you, that's actually going to help you as well, because it will help you think differently and give you a different perspective on things. Because most of the times we're in our own heads and
Absolutely.
we can't figure a way out. Often I have these meetings with net women, and we have a peer connection or a mastermind group where we just literally go out into breakout rooms and we have the conversations with our peers, some role models. And it's amazing. Just after 1 hour of being with people that you wouldn't normally spend 20 minutes, an hour with, and they're coming out just happy, smiling, light bulb moments everywhere. And just with that little bit of clarity, that focus to be able to say, you know what, I'm actually going to go back and do this. I'm going to try it and see what happens, because it's just that idea of just changing it a little bit can help so much. And so for me, my kind of switch was when I did my NLP master practitioner, and that really changed my life. I went from being not confident, just constantly every day questioning myself, saying that I wasn't good enough, felt like I didn't deserve it. And after my divorce, it completely knocked me. I was at rock bottom and I knew the only way was up. But after that, it was actually that point where I thought, if I don't do something about this, I just stay in the same place. Where am I going to go? Like, how is this going to make my life any better? So I genuinely believe that someone on the outside who can look in at what you're doing is going to help you change your perspective on many things. So if you feel stuck right now and you think, firstly, you have to acknowledge the fact that you have imposter syndrome, because many people are in denial. They're like, oh, that's not me.
Yeah.
I never have that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But if you ask me, I still feel stuck, and I still haven't made the changes I wanted to make for the past 3 years. And you're like, you sure you don't have it? Yeah, 100%. Denial is a big thing.
Yeah, and a lot of people do have it. And I think if you are starting to undervalue yourself, and you are starting to look at yourself and think, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not good enough. Alarm bells should start ringing in your mind, and speak to somebody. I always speak to my clients. I have half an hour with every client because I need to make sure that we're a good fit. I don't just work with anyone. And it really matters to me that we have got where you are now, where you need to be, to make sure we've got that bridge and to make sure that you achieve it. I don't work with people that I think, not ready, probably not going to be able to achieve that.
Absolutely. Same. I think, you know what? I know I've asked a very big loaded question, but I loved what you shared. I think you're spot on, especially for anyone who feels stuck with their career right now. I know it seems like everything is on your shoulder in terms of the weight, but like you said, having someone external, whether it's attending a workshop, like you were saying, I mean, I've seen the beauty of these, it's amazing. Whether it's working with a coach, I mean, obviously, you can do all of it. I would say do all of it, but if you have to choose, just bring some external perspective into your life, because like you're saying, it's such a game changer. It's obvious, and at the same time we don't do it enough. Like you're saying, the comfort zone is staying in our own mind with our own thoughts. And there is one thing you need to take away from today is the 4C's method, and is surrounding yourself with a coach, a mentor, or a peer, whoever that can challenge your thinking and help you get to where you need to be. Because as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this topic. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. By the way, I don't drink coffee. This is just water. But I'm so mad when I see all of these amazing people passing away amazing opportunities because this imposter syndrome is in there, which is why we're having this conversation today, right? Anyone listening in, get out there, do your own thing, because the world will be so much thriving and will be so much better if anyone could just tap into their full potential, because anyone has it. A lot of people just hold back, right?
Absolutely. Too much
Sorry, that was
holding
me.
back. Yeah, I love it. I mean, there is way too much holding back in this world, and I feel like there's so much potential, so much. You're much more capable than what you think, trust me. And I have worked with clients who have been at rock bottom, and they've now got very successful careers, very happy, living balanced and happy lives. And it's so important to me to see the success in other people, and I find it very, very rewarding. So get out there and find someone that's going to help you.
Absolutely. Yes. Let me check the time. Okay, time flies. We've got a few more minutes left. Any tips, any particular things that you want to share for anyone who's listening to this, who is looking to work on the imposter syndrome?
So we talked about awareness. I think the other thing is a lot of the imposter syndrome that we feel is worse with people from underrepresented communities. So women, women of color, LGBTQ plus, people of disability, etc., etc. And the reason for that is because externally, the space that's provided is not inclusive, and you don't feel like you belong. When you don't feel like you belong, you're always going to feel like an imposter.
Mm.
You're always going to feel like, I can't say this in the meeting because they're not going to get me. You don't feel safe to talk about it. You don't feel safe to bring up your point because you feel like you're going to get judged. So for me, the power comes in, yes, okay, we are talking about creating diverse spaces, but diversity, and you have to do the inclusion part, because if you start bringing in diverse people, they're going to be absolutely no use to you because they're not going to be able to share their opinions or their thoughts unless you make that space inclusive. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. 100% it does. And I feel you're... Oh, sorry, carry on.
No, go on.
I was about to say, definitely, this is actually the topic of the month for those sessions. And I'm glad that you're bringing this up, because there is no such thing as diversity without the inclusion piece, like you were saying. So again, anyone who's listening to this who's like, you know what, I just don't feel included and therefore I feel like a fraud, like you were saying, well, just think about a way where you can actually either make the space that you're in more inclusive, but also really question yourself as to, is this the right space for you? I think this is actually, we could do an entire live about that, you know, the whole thing around, do I actually make changes in the place that I am in now? Because if I don't, it looks like nobody will. Or do I actually go directly to another place that would be better where I am? And there is no magic answer to that. You know, anyone is different, and obviously every situation is unique. But I would say, like you're saying, Pinky, think also about the environment that you are in, which might have a huge toll, a huge impact on how you feel when it comes to the imposter syndrome, which is where, to be very honest with you, I know we're heavy on that today, but go back to our reference, which was bring someone into your life, a coach, a mentor that can help you see things from a different angle as well.
Yeah, and also get yourself a sponsor. Get someone who can sponsor you, because as women, we need that. Providing equity is part of what we do at Net Women, but you need a sponsor. And that's what we do. We ask sponsors to sponsor their female talent. And it's so important. It's so important. We need that piece. And I know that it's International Women's Day next week, and we're talking about embracing equity. I think it's more than just embracing it. I think it's about providing it, providing equity to people from underrepresented groups and people who get overlooked all the time for promotion, for anything, any progression. And that's one of the most important factors when it comes to inclusion.
Absolutely. Well, as usual, these things flew by. I mean, it's almost time. Any final words? But I mean, you were so inspiring. Now I need to get out there and talk about equity to anyone. But anyway, any final words?
I think one of the major things that I want to share is about equity, and about the fact that International Women's Day only comes around once a year, one day. And it drives me nuts that there's companies out there that just talk about it for one day. We are actually talking about it every single day, all the time. That is basically what we want to do. We want to create equity, to celebrate equality, because we're not there yet. We're so far away from that. So 100%. Please don't greenwash, just actually do.
I love it. Yes, let's carry on the conversations. Let's do the work. Let's provide equity to anyone who is underrepresented. Thank you, anyone, for listening to this. And if we want this conversation to be going, obviously, you'll have Pinky's detail, you'll have mine. But I mean, today is, to me, like any other day, whether it's March or not. Obviously, March is a theme, but it doesn't change the fact that, like you're saying, it's a everyday, all year long thing that we have to all, roll up our sleeve and get into. So thank you so much, Pinky, for coming today. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Anais. Thank you for having me.